The greatest enemy a pirate ever faced was not the Royal Navy. It was not the cannons or the muskets or the swords. The greatest enemy was invisible. It lived in the darkness between the wooden planks. It multiplied in the barrels of stagnant water. It crept through the quarters at night and stole men's minds before it stole their lives. It was called the sea itself, and it killed more pirates than any battle ever could. When Edward Teach, known as Blackbeard, sailed the Atlantic and the Caribbean between 1714 and 1718, he commanded a ship called the Queen Anne's Revenge. She was a 300-ton merchant vessel, captured and refitted as a pirate ship. She had a crew of approximately 400 men, the standards of the era, formidable. But aboard that, every single day was a battle against an enemy, never slept. This is the story of how pirates survived the sea, and why that survival was their true victory. The first enemy was water, fresh water. On the Queen Anne's Revenge, a ship carrying 400 men, water was rationed with mathematical 1 gallon per man per day. That gallon had to be used for drinking, cooking, and washing. In tropical waters where the ship might sail for weeks without resupply, the mathematics became desperate. Water barrels were stored below deck in the hold, where the air was hot and fetid and completely still. Rats lived in those barrels. Insects laid eggs in the water. The wood of the barrels rotted from the inside out, leaving splinters of rotting oak floating in what men had to drink. Sailors developed a term for it: bilge water. Water that had been stored so long that it separated into layers. The clean water on top, the black sludge of rot and decay on the bottom. Men drank it anyway, because the alternative was death from thirst, which came faster than death from disease. The solution was brutal and practical. Pirate captains implemented a strict rationing system. The captain drank fresh water. The quartermaster drank fresh water. The officers drank fresh water. The crew drank what was left. On Blackbeard's ship, the code was written down. Every man knew exactly how much water. The code also stipulated any man caught wasting water would have his ears cut off. Any man caught stealing water would be marooned on an island with minimal supply. The punishment was so severe that men died rather than violate the water code. And yet, knowing they might die from rationed water anyway, they obeyed. Imagine your throat, your lips, your mouth taste of salt. The water you are given smells like a dying animal. You drink it anyway because the man next to you is already showing signs of the sickness that comes from drinking seawater in desperation. You have seen 3 men die from it already. Their skin turned blue before they died. Their minds went free. The water ration you receive is your lifeline, and the captain's code is the only thing standing between you and kill. So you drink the foul water, and you pray it does not kill you. The second enemy, on a ship carrying 400 men, meat could not be refrigerated. There was no salt enough to preserve all the meat they carried. Salting meat was an art and a science. Pork was packed in barrels with salt so deep that the meat turned into something almost unrecognizable. After 3 months at sea, the meat was hard as wood. It had to be soaked for hours before it could be boiled. The texture was repulsive, the smell was worse, but it provided protein and calories that kept men alive. Biscuits were the staple, hard ship biscuits called hardtack, made from flour and water and nothing else, baked into something that resembled stone more than food. A single biscuit could take minutes to bite through. Men soaked them in water or thin broth to soften them, but the biscuits were infested. Weevils laid eggs in the flour before baking. After months at sea, each biscuit was a living ecosystem of insects. Men developed a technique. They tapped the biscuit hard on the table to dislodge the visible weevils, then ate quickly before the insects could escape back into the biscuit. Some men ate the weevils anyway. The protein content was higher that way. Fresh vegetables did not survive long. A pirate ship that was lucky enough to dock in Nassau or Tortuga would load fresh fruits and vegetables, but these had to be consumed immediately or they rotted. After 2 weeks at sea, the diet consisted entirely of salted meat, hardtack, and whatever could be grown in small gardens the crew maintained on deck. Some pirate captains ordered lime juice added to the water ration to prevent scurvy. Not all of them. The men who served under captains who ignored the lime juice developed the disease anyway. Their gums rotted, their teeth fell out, their old wounds reopened. They died slowly, bleeding from their eyes. The third enemy was disease. In the hot, humid hold of a ship, disease spread like fire. Dysentery killed more men than anything else. It started with stomach cramps, then came the blood. Men would go to the latrine 10 times a day, 20 times a day, until they were passing nothing but blood. Hydration followed. Death followed. There was no cure. The ship's surgeon, if the ship had one, could do nothing but watch. On some pirate ships, the surgeon was an escaped slave with botanical knowledge. On others, the surgeon was a drunk who had learned his trade from watching men die. Either way, the result was the same. Typhus came from lice. In the hold, where 400 men slept in shifts on the same narrow bunks, lice spread like a plague. Men scratched until they bled. Open wounds became infected. Gangrene set in. Amputation was performed without anesthesia. The screaming could be heard across the entire ship. Sometimes the amputation saved the man. Sometimes it just prolonged the dying. Fever accompanied typhus. Men hallucinated. They attacked crew members. They had to be restrained or locked below deck. Some of them never recovered. They spent the rest of their lives broken in mind. Imagine the smell. 400 men, most of them unwashed, living in a space below deck that is perhaps 20 feet wide and 40 feet long. No ventilation, no plumbing. Human waste collected in buckets. The buckets were emptied overboard, but not always frequently. The stench combined with the smell of rot from the food stores, mold from the wooden hull, and the specific reek of men dying of dysentery. The smell was so powerful that new sailors vomited for the first week. After a month, they no longer noticed it. Their sense of smell had shut down, but the disease still there, spreading. The fourth enemy was the structure of the ship itself. A wooden ship with constant battle against decay. The hull was made of oak, which was rot-resistant but not rot-proof. Every wooden plank had to be inspected regularly. Woodworms, larvae of the ship timber beetle, could tunnel through a plank and compromise the integrity of the ship. A hole the size of a finger created by woodworm could eventually lead to a catastrophic leak. Pirate crews spent hours every week caulking seams, replacing rotted wood, and applying tar and pitch to seal the gaps. The work was constant. It was also dangerous. Men fell into the sea. Men were crushed by falling timbers. Men lost fingers and hands to the tools. The carpentry work required on a ship was sophisticated. The carpenter had to understand wood grain, water pressure, and the mechanics of how a ship moved through water. A bad repair could cause the entire ship to split open. A good repair could keep a damaged ship seaworthy for months. Pirates recruited experienced carpenters with promises of a higher share of plunder. These men were valuable. They were also worked to exhaustion. On a ship in constant battle against decay, the carpenter never rested. The fifth enemy was hierarchy, mutiny. On a pirate ship, the hierarchy was different from the Royal Navy. A pirate captain was elected by the crew. The quartermaster, a position that did not exist on any other ship, was also. The quartermaster's job was to mediate disputes, to enforce the code, and to distribute plunder fairly. If a captain became too brutal, the crew could vote to remove him. If a quartermaster became corrupt, he could be challenged. This created a kind of rough democracy, but it also created instability. A new captain every few months meant no consistent strategy. It meant alliances formed and dissolved. It meant that a man who had sailed with a captain yesterday might have to fight that same man tomorrow. Mutinies. A mutiny on a small ship with a closed food supply could turn catastrophic. Men would lock the officers below deck. Officers would lock the men below deck. Whoever controlled the water and the food supplies would eventually control the ship. History recorded mutinies where men died of thirst while locked in the hold, guarded by men who were also slowly dying of thirst above deck. The mutineers won the ship but lost so many men in the process that the ship became a ghost vessel, barely able to sail. Blackbeard maintained control through reputation and brutality. He was known to be unpredictable, a man who laughed while the ship was being attacked, a man who would whip a crew member for no reason, then give that same man double rations the next day. The unpredictability kept men off balance. They could not predict what Blackbeard would do, so they stayed alert. They obeyed. They did not mutiny. The strategy worked for 4 years. Then the Royal Navy caught him, and he was hanged. The sixth enemy, storm. In the open Atlantic during hurricane season, a ship could encounter waves 30 feet high. The ship would rise up the face of the wave, crest at the top, and then plunge down the other side. Men lashed themselves to the rigging to avoid being swept overboard. The sails would tear, ropes would snap, wood would crack. If a mast snapped, the entire ship could become unmanageable, rolling in the waves and then slowly sinking. There was no way to abandon ship in a storm. The boats would be destroyed. The men would have to stay aboard, fighting the ship itself, until either the storm passed or the ship sank. Storm survival required skill and luck and desperation. The crew would deploy sea anchors, canvas bags filled with water, dragged behind the ship to slow its drift and keep it pointed toward the wave. They would furl the sails to reduce the pressure on the mast. They would pump water from the hold constantly to prevent the ship from becoming too heavy and sinking. The work was continuous and exhausting. Men worked in 12-hour shifts, then collapsed. Other men took their place. The ship would pitch and roll, and men would be thrown across the deck. Broken bones were common. Death from being crushed between rolling cargo barrels was not uncommon. The seventh enemy was isolation. A pirate ship could be at sea for months without seeing land. The horizon was endless. The same men day after day, the same water, the same food, the same wooden planks under your feet. The human mind was not designed. Men developed what was called the melancholy, a kind of depression that made them want to jump overboard. Others developed a kind of madness, hallucinating voices or seeing things that were not there. Drinking was the escape. Pirate ships carried rum as part of the ration, and men drank heavily. Drunk men were dangerous. Drunk men started fights. Drunk men got people killed. Nassau, the pirate haven in the Bahamas, was the opposite of the ship. It was land. It was women. It was fresh food and rum and the possibility of forgetting the sea for a few weeks. Pirates spent their plunder in Nassau with the desperation of men who knew they might never spend money again. They drank until they fought over women. They gambled away their shares of plunder, and then, when the money ran out, or when the Royal Navy was getting close, they returned to the sea. They returned to the slow, grinding battle against every invisible enemy. The eighth enemy was time. Every pirate knew that his life had an expiration date. The average pirate career was less than 5 years. Some men lasted a few months before deserting or being killed or dying from disease. The lucky ones lived long enough to retire with a fortune. Most did not. Blackbeard lasted 4 years. Captain Kidd lasted longer, but he was eventually caught and hanged. Anne Bonny and Mary Read, two women who disguised themselves as men to sail with pirates, both died in prison. The career path led to one of 3 outcomes: death at sea, death by execution, or retirement with enough money to disappear into the colonies. The pirates knew this. They sailed anyway. The pirate code was their response to the invisibility of the enemy. Because the sea itself could not be defeated, the pirates created a structure to maximize their chances of surviving it. The code was written down. Every crew member signed it. It stipulated who got what share of the plunder, when they could drink, who would arbitrate disputes, what the punishments would be for violating the code. The code was not about cruelty, it was about survival. It was about making the irrational rational. It was about turning an impossible situation into one that could be endured. When modern people think of pirates, they think of action and adventure, treasure, and romance. They think of Blackbeard because his name has survived. The truth is simpler and simpler. Pirates were men who had no choice. They were escaped slaves and runaway indentured servants and men who had been pressed into the Royal Navy and deserted. They were dead. The sea did not care about their desperation. The sea took what it wanted, and the pirates, in response, created a kind of genius, an engineering of survival, a code of conduct that let 400 broken men live and work together despite every incentive to betray each other. The greatest legacy of the pirate age was not the plunder or the terror or the romance. The legacy was the evidence that human beings could organize themselves in the face of impossible conditions. The pirate code influenced the constitutions of later democracy. The election of the captain influenced ideas about representative government. The pirate division of labor influenced the development of modern management theory. The pirate ship was a floating experiment in how humans could cooperate despite everything pushing them toward chaos. So when you think of Blackbeard, Do not think of the man with the burning fuses in his beard. Think of the carpenter keeping the ship seaworthy. Think of the quartermaster distributing water fairly. Think of 400 men, each one slowly dying, agreeing to a code that gave them a chance. That was the real piracy, not the taking, the surviving. What aspect of pirate life would you like to explore next? Weapons and tactics, the recruitment of new crew members, the economy of piracy and how plunder was actually divided, the women who sailed as pirates, the end of the age, and why piracy disappeared. Let me know in the comments, and we will dive deeper into the hidden systems that made the age of piracy possible.